Normally, in a murder case, you'll have a victim. Then you will go looking for the murderer. In this case, we had a murderer, but he didn't know who the victims were. At one stage, there was no room under the floorboards. There were so many bodies there.
Wait, okay, it's not silence if you say the word silence. Let's start the show.
Welcome to Cordkillers, the show about watching the stuff you love when you want, where you want, however you want. I'm Tom Merritt. Brian Brushwood, it's also, there's victims if you find bodies. I'm confused.
Well, yeah, dude, what's up with the, Bryce, what's up with this show?
So that's an upcoming documentary for Netflix called Memories of a Murderer, the Nielsen tapes. So this is about one of Britain's most infamous serial killers. He stuffed about 15 corpses of young boys under the floorboards of his home in the 70s and 80s.
That brings us down.
Yeah.
But apparently some hundreds of new tapes were unearthed that he recorded himself, giving insight into his thought process. Part of the reason they didn't know who any of the victims were was because it was the 70s and the 80s, and we really didn't know who those people were if they weren't reported missing.
Have the critics said anything about this yet, or have the Nielsen reviews not come in yet?
So this documentary debuts on Netflix August 18. Check it out then.
Oh, I just got it.
Sorry, I should have said Nielsen ratings. That's better.
And the
That person
who
just
got
getting it is, of course, Merrill Barr. Welcome back to the show, Merrill.
Thank you. Do you think Nielsen's into incest babies?
Yeah, no, God, no. Moving right along.
I'm just wild about saffron. That's a different Nielsen. All right, let's get on to the primary target. All right, folks, last week you probably saw all kinds of headlines about Netflix. Some saying Netflix is doomed. They lost everybody. And others saying Netflix rolling along like thunder. Here's the scoop. Netflix's domestic subscribers, domestic for Netflix is Canada and the U.S., dropped by 430,000. That's bad news. Earnings per share, a mark of profitability, came in below expectations. Netflix attributed all that to a lighter offering of shows and what they called pandemic choppiness. Like everything's just kind of unpredictable right now. But they didn't mention all those new competing streaming services. In fact, co-CEO Reed Hastings said, does HBO or Disney have a differential impact compared to the past? We're not seeing that in the data we have. That gives us comfort. So basically they're like, no, we just think it was the pandemic and our lighter slate. Didn't have anything to do with the competition. All right. Let's go on to the good news. Revenue was above expectations worldwide. Even counting the 430,000 they lost domestically, Netflix net added 1.54 million subscribers. That brings Netflix to 209 million paid memberships worldwide, still ahead of Disney Plus's 104 million. And Netflix confirmed it's moving into gaming. We've talked about that previously on the show. In its shareholder letter, Netflix wrote, "We view gaming as another new content category for us, similar to our expansion into original films, animation, and unscripted TV. Games will be included in members' Netflix subscription at no additional cost, similar to films and series. Initially, we'll be primarily focused on games for mobile devices." That comes along with other ancillary moves. The games will complement the content. That's also true of podcasts, which they hired someone to run for them, and merchandise, which they've been beefing up their staff for. Hastings said they don't expect any of these new efforts to be profit centers of their own, but instead focus on making streaming better. So he's indicating we're not making games to become a successful game company or podcast to become a successful podcast streamer or merch to become a successful merchandiser. It's all meant to feed people into the main product, which is streaming. He said, we're a one product company with a bunch of supporting elements. Co-CEO Ted Sarandos confirmed the company has no interest in acquiring live sports right now. When he was asked about that, he said, our fundamental product is on-demand and ad-free, and sports tends to be live and packed with advertising. In fact, Netflix doesn't have much interest in acquiring even other companies as it watches other media companies merge and consolidate. We've talked about Warner Media and Discovery. We've talked about the merger of Viacom and CBS. Netflix wrote in its investor letter, we are mostly competing with ourselves to improve our service as fast as we can. They really don't see these other options as competing with them. COO, Chief Operating Officer Greg Peters, said that the gaming effort will capitalize on Netflix intellectual property. He said, we're in the business of making these amazing worlds and great storylines and incredible characters. And we know the fans of those stories want to go deeper. They want to engage further. So if I could sum this up, Brian, it sounds like what Netflix is saying is we're coming up with a lot of things to keep people excited about our content, but our main business is creating IP, intellectual property, around franchises within the streaming product. That's where we're going to make our money. And we think that if we lose, we only lose because we didn't create good enough properties. It's not because there's a bunch of others out there.
Yeah, dude, it's retention. That's all it boils down to. Make me one Stranger Things mobile game that is so addictive that every time when I'm looking at my monthly budget, I'm thinking to myself, Netflix, I hardly ever watch anything, but I'll lose all my 11 credits if I cancel or whatever. Or maybe your kid's addicted to it. So Disney doesn't really have this problem. Their big problem was acquisition. They needed to come up with enough originals to attract people to give it a try. Retention is going to take care of itself to anybody who has kids, because now they've gotten a taste of Disney Plus being their babysitter, and nobody's going to want to give that up. Netflix needs to make that same play. Plus, keep in mind that Netflix, they wrote the battle strategy for this. There are many more lands left to conquer for Netflix, and so all they have to do is continue to do the exact same thing they're doing internationally. They just need to retain. This is at worst a slight embarrassment on the domestic side for them, and I to be honest, they're responding correctly with a shoulder shrug to this in terms of like, yeah, no, we're not really worried about it. We got lots more coming in the pipeline. We're more profitable because we're not spending so much money. I don't think they said this, but I would assume they're more profitable because they're not spending so much more money on.
That might be pandemic choppiness too, right? Like, well, we couldn't spend the money there for a while. So, that hits the balance sheets, et cetera. Merrill, what do you make of all this?
So the first thing is, I think this is a clear indication that Netflix has absolutely hit the ceiling at this point domestically. There's not much more growth that can happen within the North American market. Internationally, there's clearly still some growth that can take place. The other thing, though, is it's always important to remember the requirements on Netflix versus the requirements on all the other streamers is very different. Disney Plus, HBO Max, Peacock, Paramount Plus, these are all subsidiaries of a large conglomerate. Netflix is the conglomerate. The performance requirements on Netflix versus the performance requirements on Disney are very different. Netflix is, I think it was recently reported, Tom, you can correct me if I'm wrong, Netflix is in profit now. Because of right, and they're in profit, and the big thing about that is the requirement for Netflix to get in profit is a huge deal versus Disney's requirement to get in profit, because technically Disney never really has to be in profit as long as it's feeding the conglomerate that is Disney, the mega corporation.
Right, Disney Plus doesn't necessarily need to be.
Yeah,
I mean, Disney would like to be a profit, but I get what you're saying.
Yeah.
Right.
Disney Plus could exist as a loss leader indefinitely because they have an engine on the back end with theatrical releases.
As far as the subsidiary things, that all leads to like what they're doing now. It feels like to me is building a conglomerate of these subsidiaries that don't turn profit themselves, but profit the overall company. They're basically now building out in reverse. So like all these other companies we have a huge thing, eat other things to make the thing bigger. Netflix is doing the slow growth. They're now adding these loss leader subsidiaries to their big product.
So Tom, I wonder if in a world where it's less important that Netflix have a new catalog than it is that it appears to have a new catalog. Like, it seems like the moment they feel like lifting their fingers to do an ad spend to remind people of like, look at this slate of movies you never knew was on Netflix, they can get back that 500,000 subscribers pretty quick and easy if they're even worried about the, I'm using air quotes, embarrassment of having lost any.
Yeah, I think you're right. What I get from this is Netflix, and I've said this before on the show, so this isn't new, but Netflix is trying to become Marvel. in it actually trying to become Disney. They want to have a Marvel and a Star Wars and a Muppets, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, except they unfortunately need to build them from in-house. So acquiring Miller World was a way to potentially feed that, because they get a lot of great intellectual property and they can try stuff. Not all of it will necessarily work. Miller World might not be the thing. They know they have Stranger Things. They know they have Bridgerton. Those seem to be strong brands out of the gate. They are trying to build some stuff with Zack Snyder in a couple of different ways, both with Army of the Dead and with his upcoming Rebel, not Star Wars movie. I don't think Netflix knows which of these bets are going to work, but they have made so many of them and continue to make new ones that they're confident that something is going to take off. Something's going to become franchise, and you're going to see, this is my theory, you're going to see, instead of like, wow, Netflix has a couple of originals. Oh, wow, Netflix has a lot of successful originals. They're not all successful to the same people. They hit a lot of niches. They want to do that with franchises. They want to have ongoing franchises that people love and have to consume every game, podcast, and piece of merchandise they put out. And they want to have multiples of those across lots of different audiences.
And as a matter of fact, it's weird how well this tracks to personal finance, in that you make wild speculative bets, whether it's your job or the way you invest your money in your youth. But as you build a portfolio, you begin to do, rebalancing, you highly diversify your assets. And on top of that, as we mentioned before, Netflix has many more islands to conquer as they move all around the world. Eventually,
yeah, some of them are literal islands.
Yeah, eventually they'll take over Antarctica.
Yeah, exactly. Or any island nation that comes to mind, Fiji, Tonga, whatever. I think, honestly, I think overall this is a good earnings report for Netflix, even though it's got that big banner headline of losing 430,000 in the U.S. That just means they really are at saturation in the U.S. And they're so big that 430,000 is a rounding error for them, as long as they're growing in the places that they need to still be growing in.
And you've read more of the articles than I have, Tom. At any point, did they try to be defensive about anything? Because if not, then that truly is the right play for them to be all like,
yeah. Merrill, you tell me if you agree with me on this. I feel like the most offensive they ever got was about competitors, where they're like, nah, we're not worried about them. We're not worried about the HBO Maxes and the Peacocks.
I don't even know if I call it defensive, and I don't think that's defensive. I think they're just laying out the reality. They're not trying to act like bravado. They're not trying to bravado it, right? They're not trying to be like, we are. I think what they're really saying is their business model is inherently different than our business model. We are not worried about them because we have an entirely different way we run our business versus how they run their business.
And also for what it's worth, it's like, in a micro level of the YouTube channels that we do, if you stop coming up with new big ideas, then you shed viewers. That's the natural order of things. And it seems to me like if somebody were to throw a microphone up in my face and be like, what about so-and-so magic guy? Are you feel threatened by him? I'm like, dude, no, I don't. I've been very busy. I haven't posted a video, so we shed a couple thousand subscribers. So what?
Yeah. No, it's a classic case. When I was working in radio, when you were the number one rock station in the town, you said like, nah, we're not worried about those other rock stations. We're just focused on bringing you the best rock and roll we can. When you were the number two, you went, we're so much better than that leading rock station. Man, we're going to take them down, right? And Netflix is the leader right now. Of course they're not. They're not going to get too defensive. Well, folks, that's why we have decided to be very defensive about any Patreon that has more patrons than us.
Yeah, dude. Look, I'm not going to say that it's a measuring contest of number of patrons, but I don't know. I might have been peeking and seen that somebody else has more subscribers. And
yeah, F you, Modern Rogue and Daily Tech News Show.
Oh, jeez. But the important part is that we want you right here, keeping us loud, live, and independent. Just $1 an episode. That's all we ask, to bring you the latest in cord-cutting news in a format that hopefully you find enjoyable. Patreon.com/Cordkillers. Thank you very much.
Yeah, you're the cooler patron when you are the Patreon of Cordkillers.
I mean, why not all three?
I know, right? I mean, that just makes you even cooler. All right, let's move on to how to watch. We mentioned HBO Max a lot in comparison to Netflix, so let's check in right now on how HBO Max is doing, and it's doing well. Had some good news this past week. Feeling so good, it's letting Snapchat users watch full pilot episodes of select shows for free on Snapchat. You can even chat and share emojis with your friends while you watch. Why not? That's just the latest way HBO Max has to keep its numbers going up. They announced a gain of 2.85 million domestic subscribers to reach 47 million at the end of the last quarter. That's up 10.7 million over last year. 12.1 million of those are direct HBO Max subscribers, meaning they aren't accessing it through an existing HBO membership. Globally, HBO and HBO Max have $67.5 million. AT&T said it's going to raise its expectation from 67 to 70 to 70 to 73 million global subscribers by the end of the year. Some of that growth came from the release of the blockbuster titles on HBO Max the same day as they appear in theaters. Warner Brothers has said previously it won't do that in 2022. That was just a 2021 pandemic era thing. But it did say this week that HBO Max will release, or Warner will release, 10 films straight to HBO Max. Now, they might also go into theaters, but these are meant to be HBO Max exclusives. That, along with strong content like House of the Dragon, the Game of Thrones spinoff, Suicide Squad spinoff Peacemakers, are expected to help HBO Max keep its momentum in 2022. Warner Media head Jason Kilar did not say what those 10 HBO Max exclusive movies would be, but keep in mind, Warner Media has agreed with Cineworld on a 45-day window for a portion of its films, so it's not those. Kilar said the company does not plan to return to a one-size-fits-all strategy anyway. Kilar said, I certainly don't anticipate us going back to the way the world was in 2015, 2016, 2017, where windows were quite lengthy between theatrical and home exhibition. Of course, whether Kilar keeps his job after Warner Media is spun off from AT&T and merged into Discovery is a separate question. That's not happening until next year. AT&T CEO John Stankey said, no news is good news. The merger's on track. They expect it to close on or about May of next year. And he updated on another spinoff of cord-killing interest. DirecTV is set to be spun out into its separate company on schedule to close in August.
I'll tell you what, man, I didn't intend to tee this up, but this exactly fits into that idea of like when you're young and you got nothing to lose and you're trying to jockey for a position, that's when you take daring bets. And as much as I want to mock, Snapchat in all ways, because I don't understand it because I'm an old, the fact is those are the right plays to make. Do that kind of daring stuff, and then later diversify. Act as though the way things have always been done is, an old and busted compared to your new hotness. All of these moves sound right to me.
This also goes back to what I was saying about the difference between operating as a subsidiary versus operating as the primary. Like HBO Max can do that Snapchat move, because they don't have to inherently return profit on the entity because the entity is actually Warner Media. And as long as Warner Media is turning a profit, it's fine. Whereas I don't think you would see Netflix putting episodes onto Snapchat, even in the early days, if Snapchat.
They did put episodes on YouTube though, when they were trying to get the word out. But to your point,
but just the one, but just like one episode, right? I mean, everybody.
That's same for HBO
that.
Max. They're just putting pilot episodes. They're not putting full series.
So the other thing is, I know Bryce, you and I were having this conversation on Twitter the other day. A lot of confusion about the 10 HBO Max exclusive films and how it compares to what was happening this past year. The big difference is the films that went to HBO Max this past year and are going to for the rest of this year. Those were films that were supposed to be theatrical, and that was the big thing. Is these movies that were designed for theatrical, meant to be theatrical, pissed a bunch of people off because it's like dropping on HBO Max. There's also a money reason there, which is your residuals are tied to things like the box office, things like the second window releases, things like the selling internationally. And those are all things that get messed up when suddenly they drop on streaming. These films that are HBO Max exclusives for next year run on different contracts. If you know a thing in development is being sent to streaming, your residuals are all paid out up front in the contract. They buy out the back end ahead of time for like 5 years or something. It's an entirely different dynamic. And so these are just the way I think about those. Just those are going to be their Netflix originals, right? Versus the things that are theatrical and things that are HBO Max. Those are two separate entities.
Yeah, I look at this. We're going to release 10 films straight to HBO Max as a brilliant piece of press crafting because before 2020, they were already doing this. All of the studios were already doing this, where they would have a comedy or a romance that they would decide, you know what, this isn't gonna hang in theaters. Let's put this straight to a streaming service. They might sell it to Netflix. They might put it on their own service if they had one. So I think this is HBO Max saying, hey, we have 10 movies we plan to put on HBO Max. And everybody thinks we're the place that puts movies straight on HBO Max. So let's make it sound like a bigger deal than it is.
Mm-hmm.
Also, it does sound like a good way to have your cake and eat it too, where if streaming products pay out as though they're the last act in a feature film, and let's say for whatever reason you have a home run that then goes into theatrical releases, it seems like you're like, oh, well, I mean, it's just a streaming movie that was real popular. How are we to know? Writers, directors, everyone who expects front end, gross points or whatever.
Yeah, but they're not going to put any of their 2022 blockbusters onto HBO Max.
No.
This is going to be stuff they wouldn't have put in theaters anyway, or would have had very short runs in theaters if they had one at all.
The one exception might be I could see them launching a premiere access version like what Disney Plus has, which is like $30. Give us $30. We'll give you the home release. But this whole like, here's the monthly subscription day and day, that's gone. That's a one-time thing.
Yeah. Now, I must make a correction. Earlier, I made a reference to a Donovan song in relation to a Nilsson joke. Wabbit Magic corrected me. Thank you, Wabbit Magic, for catching that. Instead of Wild About Saffron, my joke should have been I put the lime in the coconut. I regret the error.
I'm so glad. Boy, if
Are you sure
nothing,
you're not a
if
dad?
Not fastidiously accurate.
Yeah.
Do you have secret children?
Secret. Yeah, they're invisible. Let's talk about what to watch and Under Surveillance.
Like here to tell you, it's all about location. Under surveillance.
Speaking of HBO Max, a new trailer for Dune is out, showing off the star-studded cast that includes the likes of Zendaya, Timothée Chalamet, Rebecca Ferguson, Oscar Isaac, Josh Brolin, Stellan Skarsgård, Dave Bautista, Jason Momoa, Javier Bardem, Charlotte. You know what? It just keeps going on and on. Dune premieres at the Venice Film Festival September 3rd, coming to theaters and HBO Max October 22nd. In related Dune news, HBO Max's prequel series, Dune: The Sisterhood, about the Bene Gesserit, has named Haunting of Bly Manor's Diane Adamu-John as showrunner.
Holy cow, man. What a star-studded, amazing production. This is going to be the hit of 2020.
I left out some very big names, and I still read all those big names.
I've been very guarded about looking at any of this because Dune is a precious property to me. I'll try to speak in coded language. I approve very much of what the story emphasis of this trailer was, in that it hid other aspects of the movie. Tom, does that make sense?
It does. It makes perfect sense. And It's pretty close to my own reaction, which is like, well, that looks right.
That looks right. Like everything you need to know. That's everything you need to know.
That looks good. Yep. Also, you haven't shown me other things.
That's right.
But you showed me a little of each without, Yeah. What about you, Merrill? I don't know if you're into Dune as much as we are.
I am not. I've never read the book. I've never seen David Lynch's movie.
You mean what's his name? Something Smithy. Alan Smithy's movie. Alan Smithy.
Alan Smithy.
So this is I've had this conversation before with people where it's like I look at those trailers and I'm like, this looks like a fine standard boilerplate sci-fi epic that I've seen versions of before. And I understand this is like the John Carter of those things, right? It's like this was the original. This is where it started. Like so it's like, okay. So we'll like I don't know what spice is. I'm sure it's cool. Like
hey, Tom, if I could just bring up a totally unrelated story.
Sure.
Man, a while back I showed my daughter the Tom Cruise movie Edge of Tomorrow. And she went in not knowing anything about the movie at all. She had a real good time.
Mm-hmm. I think, Merrill, you're going to have a real good time.
All right. I'm excited. Also, I will say it's. I've been wondering what the hell is going on with the HBO Max show because that's something that's been in development for years. They've been running through showrunners on that thing like crazy.
Yeah, well, let's see how long this one lasts. Paramount Plus showed off a trailer for Star Trek Lower Decks and Star Trek Prodigy. Prodigy is about 6 young aliens who commandeer an abandoned Starfleet vessel, which is not called the Prodigy. The show's not named after the ship. The ship is named the USS Protostar, and it has a holographic Captain Janeway, who will be voiced by Kate Mulgrew. Lower Decks trailer showed off guest appearances from Jeffrey Combs, who played like 15 characters in the Star Trek universe, Wei-Yung and a bunch of others. Robert Duncan McNeil, who played Tom Paris. Prodigy coming this fall, and Lower Decks premiering on August 12th.
So I'm gonna bet that Prodigy will surprise, much as the Star
Possibly
Wars
delight.
Yeah,
certainly surprise.
Much like the younger targeted Star Wars programs did. Man, oh man, was I surprised that somehow in trailer form they managed to make Lower Decks look bad.
Really?
I don't understand what it is about trailers for cartoons that make them look dumber than they should. Maybe it's the seeking out of one-note jokes and one-note jokes. That's not a show that thrives on its one-note jokes, although they're always good base hits. I don't know.
I will say that I really like that trailer, but also I watched that trailer now loving the show. I don't remember having much of an opinion one way or another than the original trailer for the first season, but
I was highly skeptical, and it was a surprise to both me and Tom when we loved the show. And in fact, we were cautious about saying our opinion to each other because we were afraid that we were the only ones that liked it.
Here's all I'll say. This season we're about to see was ordered and written at the same time the last season was. So this is all part of that same cycle. So this is coming. This season will have be coming from the exact same momentum train that the last season was. Whereas like when season 3 comes, because it's already ordered, that's part of a new cycle of production.
So for right now, this is before anybody has noted it to death and told them more of this or whatever.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
My reaction to the trailer was, I guess, filling in the blanks. I was like, oh, that's a joke that will be made in this kind of scenario because I know Lower Decks. And that's a joke that, and Boimler. Okay, so we're going to see how he gets brought back in, but they're not going to tell us in the trailer. Like, I kind of liked it, but I didn't really think about it as representing Lower Decks. It was more like a clue hunting expedition.
Yeah, if you're not already a fan, I would say, like, if you didn't know nothing about the show, that's the lens I was viewing in. I was like, yep, I would not want to watch it, just like I didn't want to watch it the first time. But boy, am I glad that I got bullied into watching it.
Here's another interesting one. Peacock and Universal have a partnership with Blumhouse and Morgan Creek to make 3 Exorcist films, which will continue on from the original 1973 Exorcist, but it sounds like they might just ignore the sequels. It will star Leslie Odom Jr. alongside Ellen Burstyn, in the role as Chris McNeil, which is what she played in the original film. The first film will premiere theatrically October 13th, 2023, before going to Peacock. So it's going to hit the theaters. The other 2 movies, they say, may premiere on Peacock. So they're going to make all 3. They might send 1 to theaters and the other 2 to Peacock, which is an interesting twist.
I could see that working. Merrill, are you optimistic about...
Yes, because if Blumhouse has proven anything, is that they are really good at rebooting properties, and this is the exact same play they made with Halloween, and their Halloween reboot is by far the best, like, Halloween anything since the original. So I am completely on board with seeing what they do here.
You're right. They did the exact same thing where they continued on from the original Halloween, but ignored all the sequels. Yeah.
Correct.
Deadline and The Hollywood Reporter say Netflix has started talking to Warner Brothers about making another season of Manifest. The show canceled by NBC, but suddenly hugely popular on Netflix that we talked about. There's the usual save my niche popular show going on with Manifest, and sounds like maybe it's working.
The one thing I find very interesting about this story compared to other versions of this that we've seen in the past, there was like the infamous Chuck fans going to Subway and buying all of the Subway. So that way Subway would be like, yeah, can you please make more of this show so we can sell more sandwiches? This is a case where the fan campaign has an actual metric they can use and point to and go, we're doing it, which is Netflix has a top 10 that is computer driven and the computer is saying that it's the #1 show. So that counts for something. It's a real metric.
And that's the other thing is that Netflix, really all the over-the-top services have the benefit of essentially not only showing the shows and gauging social interest and all that stuff, but they know when you pause, when you click away, when you stop watching. I mean, everybody is a test audience now.
How many episodes you watch, how quickly you watch those episodes.
Whether or not you gobble
They've
them all
talked about how many people finish a show, right? Like they know the metrics that they have, and they have a lot of
That's interesting because if you were to game the system by just putting Manifest on and letting it play, Netflix algorithms might be sophisticated to know, like, okay, that's aberrant behavior for that account, right?
Well, and also if you leave it playing, it's like it knows, like, well, you don't usually watch the credits on things. You click to the next episode, so it knows you're not actively watching.
And so Netflix may be looking at it and go, like, these people may be trying to game the system, but they're actually watching the show, so they must really like it, you know?
They probably can do some A/B testing as well, like even on a Roku. So certainly on a browser, they can watch mouse behavior. But even on like a Roku device or something, maybe what they do is they A/B test, like, okay, we're going to have it forward 10 seconds into the credits. Now we're going to test it and just make you watch 30 seconds of credits. And if you get through that 30 seconds of credits at the end, they're like, you're not really there. You're not really watching.
Yeah.
Nobody sits through that much credits.
Yep. And then also the other thing is that Netflix has already proven it does really well in saving network shows that have some library. Like this is Lucifer. This is the Lucifer story. Lucifer got canceled after 3 seasons at Fox, went to Netflix, became the biggest show in streaming, and has gone on for 3 more seasons that they stretched down to 4 years. Like it's like this is Netflix bread and butter, and I really believe we'll see a deal on this before all is said and done.
And Netflix released a trailer for the prequel to Zack Snyder's Army of the Dead. The prequel is called Army of Thieves, tells the story of Ludwig Dieter and how he was hired to pull off a heist with a crew of aspiring thieves, listed only as coming soon, but it was a pretty complete trailer. And honestly, Brian, I wasn't expecting much out of this, but it looked better than I expected.
I must admit, Tom, I'm fully busted. I somehow missed that there was a trailer to see, but I'm glad it looks good.
Did you watch it, Merrill?
I did. Oh, yeah. I watched the trailer, but I still haven't seen Army of the Dead. So all of the whatever it's referencing mean nothing to me. I mean, that's really it looks cool. It looks like a fun heist, and they're talking about like an outbreak in the U.S. and all these things, which is all great, but I have no referential context for what they're talking about.
A few other notes here. Neil Gaiman's Anansi Boys got a series order for the Amazon co-production. Adult Swim and Crunchyroll released a trailer for Blade Runner Black Lotus, an anime set between the original Blade Runner and Blade Runner 2049. Netflix released a teaser for the animated The Witcher, Nightmare of the Wolf. That focuses on the early life of Geralt's mentor, Vesemir, coming to Netflix August 23rd. Speaking of Lucifer Season 6 has a date, arriving on Netflix September 10th. That is the final season of Lucifer. Or is it? Doctor Who released a Season 13 trailer featuring returning companion Mandip Gill as Yasmin Khan and new companion John Bishop. This season of Doctor Who will be a single storyline over 8 episodes. They didn't give a date. They said returning later this year. A trailer is out for the final season of Season 11 of The Walking Dead, premiering August 15th on AMC Plus and August 22nd on AMC. You get a little earlier if you're on AMC Plus. The return of Dexter got a trailer and a premiere date of November 7th. And finally, Variety sources say a live-action Pokemon series is in development at Netflix, with Lucifer showrunner Joe Henderson reportedly attached to write and executive produce.
Tom, out of all of these, the one I'm most excited about is Anansi Boys, which is a bit ironic because I did love American Gods and I did love Anansi Boys. I really gave the college try to the TV version of American Gods, and it just didn't take, and I gave up. But I do think the lightness and the charm and the befuddled wit of Anansi Boys, it was such a cute story that I can see watching that with Bonnie because I don't know. It's a book. It's out. You remember? It's about a befuddled a young adult trying to be cool, and then suddenly there's a cool person. Anyway, it almost has Ted Lasso vibes to me from that I could see happening.
Merrill, which of these final stories caught your eye?
Pokemon. Like that's okay. So I'm gonna.
So if you do a live action Pokemon, you have to actually catch a Pokemon for it.
Full disclosure: Joe is a friend, right? And I'm excited for him because I love him, but also I know for a fact that I'm also friends with the writers who wrote Detective Pikachu, and the thing that I learned from their stories is that the company, Pokemon Company, learned a lot about trusting the creatives they give their properties over to, because the Detective Pikachu movie went through a ton of rewrites only to then just circle back to the original writers. And I really hope that they just imbue that trust into Joe, where it's like, okay, clearly you have a take and we like it, so we're putting our faith in you. Like I'm super pumped to see where this goes.
Pikachu, we see you. All right, let's talk about what we had our eyes on. What have you been watching, Merrill?
All right, 2 quick hits. First one, HBO Max. There is a Woodstock 99 documentary called Peace, Love, and Rage. And it is straight up what you think it is. It is a full-blown coverage of the weekend of Woodstock 99, which is infamous for being a total disaster.
A rolling stock show, I believe is what you can refer to it as.
And it's just fascinating. And they really dig into, like, they don't just do, like, the classic thing of like Limp Bizkit showed up and then there was a riot. Like they dig into like, no, that is not what happened. And in fact, we really kind of can't blame the artist for this. And there's this whole societal problem that needs to be addressed. Go watch it. Fantastic. The other quick hit, in the pandemic, I've really gotten into certain web comics and webtoons. And I recently discovered on Instagram this thing called Tubby Nugget. Which is this independent creation about a alien that comes to Earth from Nuggetville, and it just befriends a couple humans, and then goes on crazy adventures, and they just start doing little animated shorts within the account. And
cool.
It's so adorable, it's so sweet, and you gotta check it out. Instagram.com/TubbyNugget.
Brian, what about you?
Well, as you know, I was out in a family reunion, so I didn't get a chance to watch as much as I would have liked. However, the one kind of slow night, I was hanging out with a bunch of the, late 20-something cousins, and none of them had heard of I Think You Should Leave. And
oh no, that's great.
And so I found that there's great joy, not just in turning it on and watching it, but DJing. Like, okay, now I know I'm gauging your reaction. I'm playing this for you. I've seen what you responded to. Now we got to jump to this other thing. And before I know it, we're over at Auntie Donna or whatever. It was really a lot of fun. And I almost wonder if there's not an opportunity there for Netflix to make it easier to play that role of, oh, you need to see this. And now, okay, now you got to see this, and not necessarily in the order. I think you should see. Yeah. Too good.
Well, I got a sneak peek at the movie coming out the end of this week, Jungle Cruise.
Yeah, no, it's pronounced Jumanji.
No, it's not.
Oh, really?
Yeah, really.
Go on, tell me.
If you have been on Jungle Cruise, then you've been spoiled on this movie.
Oh, that's wonderful. Jungle Cruise is
but
adorable.
In the best possible way, I think. Like having been on it not that long ago, I was like, oh, they're definitely capturing the spirit of the lighthearted, pun-filled Jungle Cruise that I experienced at actual Disneyland. It's fun. It's, in my opinion, the cast that makes this. If you put less, not even accomplished, but just actors who weren't suited to these roles and could execute as well as these actors can, they wouldn't have pulled it off. But they did. They had genius casting, and it's a good time. It's not the best movie. It's not going to be like 99 on Rotten Tomatoes, I would imagine, or anything like that. But it's a good time. It's a fun movie, and I enjoyed it.
That's awesome.
What should we be on the lookout for, Bryce?
Hey, I got a pick for everybody. Guess what? Ted Lasso's back. Oops. We are covering it on Spoilerin Time. We actually did not cover the first season, so we will be jumping straight into season 2. If you don't know Ted Lasso, choo-choo, it's time to get on board. This is a dramedy from Apple TV Plus about an American college football coach who gets recruited to coach an English Premier League English football team. And he's originally brought on to tank the team, but he's so positive. He's so nice. He connects to people. He actually really starts uniting everybody. And you start to feel real hope for this kind of oddball team. Season 2 just came out, and I think that the way that they start season 2, I'll say this is not a spoiler. It's like the very first thing that happens. You can tell it happens immediately, but they start with a time skip, which is like great. We don't need to continue the very end of season 1. Let's go to the next thing.
What happened in the off season?
Like, who cares? And it's
pandemic,
right?
Right.
But it's great. We love the show a lot. We're going to talk about it on Spoilerin time as they come out. Season 1 is streaming now on Apple TV Plus. Season 2 is airing on Fridays. Apple TV Plus is on a lot of devices now: Androids, TVs, set-top boxes. So look for Apple TV Plus and Ted Lasso. There's season 1 streaming, season 2 starting now.
Am I right or overstating it when I say that it was collectively our favorite thing from 2020? Full stop.
I'd be fine with you saying that.
Yeah.
I might think about it later and go, well, maybe. I doubt it. I think it would be that.
Yeah. I mean, I finished catching up on season 1, which I stopped watching last year just because there's so many other shows. And it still made me cry like 2 separate times this weekend.
With joy, though.
It's
a
good show. It's a very good drama.
As a fan of this show,
Yeah.
I can say it was the thing you were all most consistent about, because like Lower Decks you all loved, but like the Bryce, you were. But for the
okay. we would be up and down based on the episode, whereas we consistently
Ted Lasso, you were like, oh my god.
And also, we for season 1 we weren't covering it on Spoilerin time, so I wonder if us giving it a little more focus this year will change our opinion of it. Check it out, cordkillers.com or your favorite podcast directory. If you've got something we should be on the lookout for, email us, cordkillers@gmail.com. Thank you.
Hey, Brian, I've been thinking of taking up lock picking, but I don't want to spend a lot to get a lock picking training kit.
I don't even know what you're talking about. Hey, it's me, T-Tucky, Texas, right here for the Modern Rug fundraiser. I'm not going to lie to you, Tom. The IRS done wiped us out this year, so we got to sell a whole bunch of this merchandise. Says Modern Rug right on it. You got to wear a T-shirt. If you're not wearing a T-shirt, we're looking at your nipples. I don't want to see your nipples. What I want to see is the Modern Rug logo. I want a pillow that's very uncomfortable. I want tank tops. I want flip-flops. I want Jeep drops. I want dog bandanas. You got a dog. Get yourself. Your dogs are so cold, they wrote me a letter. I mean, I had to pause. That was a pun. All right, mouse pad.
Is this a hat with the logo on backwards?
That's right. Some people want to read when they look in a mirror. They want to look at their own beautiful face in an asymmetrical manner. And they want to also be able to read the word Modern Road. You ever see an ambulance? Ambulance says the word ambulance backwards. They don't say it forwards because you're reading it in the mirror. That's what you need.
That is true.
Can I get I'm going to the beach. Is there anything I can do? You got anything I can do with that? Like, get sand in my joints.
So there's sand in your craw? Is that what you're worried about? Get yourself a beach towel. Yeah, we're doing a pop-up store fundraiser. You got 5 days left. Head on over to scamstuff.com and buy a whole bunch of stuff that says the words Modern Rogue and quotes from it on it.
We've got some Diamond Club, some secret Diamond Club stuff in here as well.
Yeah, as a matter of fact, so the limited edition versions are the only ones that have diamonds in there for our team. But I'll tell you what, man. Team really pulled it together. They came up with 75 different combinations, product designs in there. I'm really, really proud of them. And whoo boy, 100% of whatever, 100% of whatever profit, that's what it's called.
Okay, this one is reflected and upside down.
Yes. Sometimes you're doing a handstand looking in the mirror. You want to know how you look doing a handstand? You want to be able to read the word Modern Rogue out there? That's what you do.
There you go. All right. I didn't even think about that. Sorry, T.
That's Modern Rogue World Headquarters, 6006 I-35 between Stastny and Manchac. Scamstuff.com.
Can you just say the words wine tumbler for me one time?
No.
Let's move on to the front lines.
Front lines.
The opening ceremonies of the Tokyo Olympics reached 17 million viewers. That's well down from previous Olympic opening ceremonies. At least on broadcast. Streaming numbers were up 76% from the 2018 Winter Games and 72% from the 2016 Summer Games. So makes sense. More people streaming than watching on TV. First day of games on Saturday rose 26% for an 8.2 rating. And Peacock had its best Saturday since launch. NBC Sports Digital set a milestone for the most streamed Olympics primetime show ever, averaging 648,000 viewers per minute. Viewers also reportedly streamed 371 million total minutes from the Tokyo Olympics. That's a 21% increase from the same day at the Rio Olympics. Now, I've been very confused. Apparently, people are still watching Peacock for Olympic coverage, which is great. I've been very confused on what you can and cannot watch on Peacock. They showed the gymnastics live on Peacock, but it was out of prime time. They aren't showing any of the stuff you would have to authorize your cable subscription to watch, but they do have a Tokyo. They have like 6 channels of Olympic stuff on there. That said, I've got AT&T TV. I use that to use the NBC Sports app. I'm having a blast. This is the best comprehensive coverage that NBC has ever done. It may not be the best organized presentation. Brian, what about you?
I want to do a deep dive on this, and we'll have to save it for our after talk. But man, it was really weird seeing it out of the corner of my eye at the sports bar, because it's like the coverage on whatever main channel they were showing was so schizophrenic, just jumping from sport to sport to sport. And it would look like the Olympics, and then you would see empty stands. And then and then it took me a while to figure out, oh wait, they're only showing us weird, not even a complete game of anything. But there was definitely somebody from the USA at all times.
Yeah. I think that's interesting because I noticed that a little bit when I did watch the main channel like NBC, and I feel like they're treating NBC like the gold zone. They're like, yeah, let's go to whatever's interesting right now. And if nothing is interesting related to the U.S. right now, we'll show a pre-tape. We'll show something that happened in the middle of the night that people might not have seen yet. Whereas what I've been doing is I've been watching a lot of stuff on USA because they're doing full events. And I've been going into the NBC Sports app where they have like dedicated feeds that don't leave. They're often different announcers. They may be like Australian announcers or British announcers, but we were able to watch the entire like women's surfing heats and men's surfing heats that were only excerpted on the main channels, but you can sit there on the app and just watch the whole thing. So it really does depend on how you access it. And you kind of have to learn where the stuff is and how to get to it. It's better organized than it's been in the past, but it still could use some work, I think.
Yeah, and one last note: it is weird to see something happening and then they cut away and you're like, I wonder how that turned out. Oh, it happened days ago. Okay, that's how it turned out.
And that's the funny thing is Eileen has been looking at the actual Olympic schedule and going by that, and just like forget broadcast TV. Like, when is the stuff actually happening? We can actually just go into the app and watch it live. Because we were watching the skateboarding heats and they moved from USA to NBC. And I was like, wait, why did they cut away? Oh, they moved it to channels. I'm like, I should have just been watching it on the app. I wouldn't have got interrupted.
Yeah. M. Night Shyamalan's Old brought in $16.5 million domestic and $23 million worldwide, beating Snake Eyes' $17.4 million worldwide. However, the worldwide winner was China's White Snake 2, The Tribulation from the Green Snake, for the Green Snake, which brought in $29.8 million. Tom, these numbers sound so weird to my own ears. Meanwhile, F9 hit $600 million worldwide, and Black Widow has passed $300 million.
That $600 million is like water in the desert, isn't it? Like, oh yeah, that's what they're supposed to look like.
Yeah, right. I mean, it's like. Also, I'm so curious because, like, here in Austin, we're seeing a resurgence of COVID cases. We just went back to stage 4 lockdowns and stuff. So, the world's upside down.
Hey, I got a question. They made a G.I. Joe movie?
Yeah, spinoff
with the
Eyes.
Like
that's
recently?
why it only made 17.4 million worldwide.
He
Bryce.
redid the canon.
But by the way, Snake Eyes, the character that's cool because he never talks and you never see his face.
Yeah.
All his
Lots of
face
dialogue.
and him talking.
Why didn't they tell anyone they were making a movie?
Look, they don't know what to do with the G.I. Joe franchise. And God bless them for trying. Because here's the thing. I love that first movie, and no one else liked that first movie. Like, I thought that first movie was exactly what that franchise should be, and no one agreed.
Apple is looking to lease a large production campus in the Los Angeles area to produce its Apple TV Plus movies and series. Apple does production in the LA area right now, but it leases the sound stages as it needs them, and it's finding it harder and harder to get space with so many different productions underway from so many different channels.
Man, I'm so glad you brought that up. Let me tell you something. Why don't you come on out to Austin, Texas? More temperate weather, beautiful 7-acre campus, all ready to go for production. Give me a call, Apple.
Where is that located again?
6006 I-35 between Stastny and Manchac.
It's just my favorite.
I'm not
bit
saying
he
that I
does.
may have texted Brian last week going, here's how you can list your property as a film location.
In all seriousness, my wife recently brought up is South by Southwest happening this year? Because it seems like we're well positioned to have a place.
She knows it's August, right?
Yeah. She's thinking ahead. Comcast CEO Brian Roberts and Viacom CBS Chairman, is it Sherry Redstone?
Yep.
Met at the end of June to discuss a streaming partnership in international markets, according to the Wall Street Journal. This could be a prelude to a merger, but as the Wall Street Journal sources say, Roberts doesn't feel like a merger is necessary. An overseas partnership could involve Peacock and Sky, among other properties.
I think Sherry would like a merger. Brian maybe is not seeing it being worth the money right now, but he's perfectly happy to team up with Paramount Plus overseas to create packages where they don't have packages. That makes sense.
This is my new favorite romance reality show.
I'm just going to yell here what I've been yelling on Twitter. Stop merging! Stop merging. For the love of God, stop merging, please.
They'll
I
never
need
stop.
a break.
They'll never stop. Soap operas have been in a slow decline, but they're not gone. And now showing a little bit of life. Peacock ordered a 5-episode limited series in the Days of Our Lives expanded universe called Days of Our Lives Beyond Salem. The plot is a mystery involving stolen jewels, tying together stories of characters traveling all over the world. So I think Marlena's in Paris or something. I don't know. They're in New Orleans and Paris. All the characters are outside of Salem, where the stories usually take place.
And a couple of app updates for you. If you're lucky enough to have gotten your hands on a PlayStation 5, you can now get 6 months of Apple TV Plus for free simply by installing the app on your game console. And Verizon released new versions of its Fios TV app for Apple TV and Fire TV. You'll still need at least one set-top box from Verizon in your home, though you can have 2 simultaneous streams per box.
I mean, the rich just keep getting richer, huh? You got a PS5 and you get free Apple TV Plus.
Man, I think it was it on this show or the previous one where Bryce said, you can get Apple TV anywhere.
You can get it anywhere. Buy a device, get a PlayStation, you got a Roku, they got a trial thing. You can
go to
get
Vegas, they got people flicking cards that have free
Apple
TV,
Apple TV
access.
Drinks to Apple TV, drinks.
All right, let's get to the dispatches from the front. Kenneth was looking for our take on a couple thoughts that have kept recurring to Kenneth while listening to the show. One, will sports continue to be the king of ad dollars going forward? Kenneth says, I'm not so sure. It seems to me that not only is the audience shrinking, but that as ad rates continue to grow, the allure of finding a cheaper way to reach the same people must surely be growing as well. If people don't want it, the ad rates will go down, would be my answer to that. Also, certain sports are shrinking, but sports interest itself is not.
Also, keep in mind, if I could chime in, ad money is not just the breaks in the show where they do a 30-second ad spot.
Sure.
It's the banners in the background, and when there's an epic moment that people will remember, that'll be on ESPN, that everybody's for and on Twitter and so on. Yes, there will always be plenty of money in sports.
Then Kenneth had a thought. Says, I want an alternative commentary track for sporting events that is just the ambient noise on the field and the officials' calls. Otherwise, watching on mute is the best option. A lot of people say that. Every time they've tried it, the ratings go down. Most people don't want that. Even maybe some people who say it don't want it. But I've seen that option being offered more. In fact, a lot of the Olympics coverage is offered without audio description, where you can just get the sounds in the audience. And then Kenneth said, why pay? I mean, broadcast is free. YouTube is free. Prime Video is a freebie that comes with my prepaid shipping. And HBO Max is free for me with my AT&T mobile plan. I have more stuff on those services than I keep up with. That's not counting other free options like Pluto. Right now, the only thing I pay for is Motor Trend, and they keep giving me half off every year.
I would say that past Brian would very much agree with number 3, but current Brian has experienced the sweet, sweet bliss of full on forgetting what ads on YouTube look like. And I can't see myself going back.
Also, I think Kenneth answered his own question. Why pay? Same reason you pay for Motor Trend. You're like, oh, but that one's worth paying for.
Right.
That's why people pay.
Yep. Email from Amar says, hey, Killers, just watched your segment where, you know what? I wasn't there for this, so maybe you should read this one.
Oh, Amar said, I just watched your segment where y'all talked about CNN Plus, and while you guys compared it to ESPN Plus, I think it compares closer to Fox Nation as it gives viewers access to new content by existing cable news talent. Hopefully they'll follow Fox Nation's lead and include the primetime shows too. It is very similar to that. You're right, Amar. I think something like CNN Plus might actually have appeal for millennials who care about the news and boomers who watch cable news all the time. Millennials who are like my dad like cable news, but prefer to watch their favorite shows on demand. And many boomers might still enjoy watching a live channel if CNN Plus decides to provide one, so long as they use the same studios and talent for most of their programming so that it feels familiar to them. Where I see mainstream appeal for CNN Plus is if they integrate their free live content into the app, like press conferences, Democratic debates, which I think have never been available to legally stream solely through a smart TV without actually having CNN, although casting should work. And Amar, as I understand it, CNN Plus is going to be available in the CNN app where all that other stuff is.
Yeah, because CNN itself, can't you just straight up watch CNN on the CNN website, or am I?
For a limited period of time before they make you authenticate
I see.
With your cable provider.
Okay. Merrill Barr, where can we follow so much more of your amazing work?
You can find me as usual on twitter.com/MerrillBarr, MERRILLBARR. That's the thing that will keep you most up to date.
Well, folks, we will miss you, but we'll be back next week. Our website is cordkillers.com. Our email address is cordkillers@gmail.com. We're live on twitch.tv/Night Attack, also on diamondclub.tv, Mondays at 7 p.m. Eastern, 4 p.m. Pacific. Talk to you next time.
Hey, Tom Merritt, what's going on?
I'm just hanging out here watching this scroll go by. What are you doing?
Trying to set up a bit where we thank our beautiful, beautiful patrons, all these wonderful names.
I'm sorry, I'm too distracted looking at these beautiful, beautiful patron names going by. Look at that one. I mean, if you wanted to be one of these people, patreon.com/cordkillers would be the place to go.
I mean, they're scratching our itch, like, because we're addicted.
As long as it's consensual, like,
we're addicted to their money.
And love. Might as well face it.
Well, God damn it.
Diamond Club hopes you have enjoyed this program.